remember the bunny with Joe Biden? Remember? Do you remember when the bunny took Joe Biden out? He's not taking Trump out. Anyway, that was a beautiful moment when the bunny saved Joe Biden.
Well, one thing's certain, no bunny can take out Trump like they did Joe Biden. And isn't it just beautiful, the difference a year can make? The president and the first lady put all their eggs in one basket when they chose to take back the White House. And boy, the annual Easter egg roll at the White House was all the better for it. The president having some fun with his bride, even making the first lady seemingly blush.
First lady, you know who she is? First lady of the United States of America.
Ah, sweet moment. And join us now from the White House is our very own Allison Steinberg. Allison, tell me, there were no trannies in sight at the egg roll this year, right?
No trannies allowed, thankfully. Thank you to President Trump for, restoring in America and really celebrating the true meaning of Easter here at the White House. As you just touched on, Emerald, when Biden was here last, he used the Easter celebration to proclaim Transgender Visibility Month, which really was just a massive slap in the face to every Christian and rational thinking American in the country. This year, though, in better news, President Trump is now boldly proclaiming the name of Jesus on the lawn here. Let's take a listen to that.
Speaking of special, Easter is special, and it's one of our favorite days. It's one of our favorite periods of time. We're honoring Jesus Christ, and we're going to honor Jesus Christ very powerfully throughout our lives, all throughout our lives, not just now, all throughout our lives. We're bringing religion back in America. We're bringing a lot of things back, but religion is coming back to America. That's why you see the kind of numbers that you're seeing, the spirit and the kind of numbers that you're seeing. So
that was really nice, Allison. That's so different. That felt a little bit different. I don't think that, maybe tell me if I'm wrong, but in him specifically honoring Jesus Christ, that seems a little bit different, where he did make a mention of God often during the first term, but the specific, we're honoring Jesus Christ, sounded different than years past to me.
Yeah, I thought the same thing, Emerald, before he's mentioned God many times. But this was the first I've really heard him say the name of Jesus here, at least on the White House lawn, which I think is just a beautiful, wonderful, very exciting moment for all of us. The only thing I would say is it's more of a faith than a religion, right? We don't have to, follow any works or do anything to have a relationship with Jesus. But I love to see it. I think he's on the right track here. This is amazing. It's so great to hear that from the president. Of course, this comes in stark contrast to everything that Joe Biden pushed in his, satanic agenda, allowing trannies to roam topless here on the White House lawn. Just disgusting to know that this happened just about a year ago. So this is a wonderful day here in America, hearing this from President Trump. Also, Trump touched on the very sad passing of the Pope. Many people are commemorating him today and honoring him in the wake of his loss. In fact, President Trump signed an executive order to lower all flags in the United States to half-mast in honor of him. Let's take a listen to that.
40,000, 42,000 people are expected all throughout the day, and it's an honor to have you. I just signed an executive order putting the flags of our country, all of them, all federal flags and state flags, at half-mast in honor of Pope Francis. So he was a good man, worked hard, he loved the world, and it's an honor to do that.
Well, I'm not Catholic, but, I do think that we should pay our respects to the Pope, who has tragically passed. So, he's just honoring him in his life here at the White House today as well.
You and Trump are being far more magnanimous than I'm about to be, Allison Steinberg. I am also no Catholic, but there's not a lot of love lost there for me. And I think I know Trump and you are both being respectful. And, I just don't think that Pope Francis would have been quite as kind in the death of Donald Trump, should it have went the other way, which I think, I'll share my thoughts in just a moment. But Allison Steinberg, it is really nice and refreshing. I've been through to a few of those Easter egg rolls. I haven't, only during Trump. I didn't go during any of the Biden years. But like you said, it is just such a stark contrast from before, where the bunny literally had to wrangle. They put a wrangler, that's what they call the press people in the White House, who usually wrangle. They're usually in charge of wrangling the press and make sure to see the press right there. They're making sure they don't get out of the bounds. But at times those years, the wrangler had to be in the bunny suit and wrangle Joe Biden, which was just so sad, so sad. Allison Steinberg, you're such a sweet person. You're so kind, such a good Christian. Thank you for joining us. I'm about to not be maybe quite so nice after this, but thank you.
Thank you so much, Emerald.
Well, obviously, as Allison Steinberg was just saying, the biggest news in the Christian world is the passing of Pope Francis. Before he was elected to be the pontiff, the world knew Francis as an Argentine Jesuit priest named Jorge Bergoglio. That man was once described by Argentine President Javier Milei as, quote, a communist turd, unquote. That statement may seem harsh, but from the very start of his reign, scandals surrounded Pope Francis, and for very good reason. His strange comments about religion were so confusing that 1,500 Catholics asked him to formally explain them. This was an ongoing issue for Francis, his interest in saying things that might be considered heresy. And what about his dealings with pedophile clergy? In 2020, Archbishop Vigano claimed that Pope Francis knowingly ignored the sanctions against pedophile priest Theodore McCarrick and made the disgraced cardinal one of his advisors instead. Francis did nothing to refute or answer those allegations in the following years. Pope Francis also told people that getting the COVID vaccine was a moral obligation, your Christian duty. He encouraged pagan symbols to be brought into the church in 2019, and he was forced to apologize for it. He met and encouraged every pro-abortion Democrat politician in America while distancing himself from any anti-abortion, pro-life, or any Republican ones. He arranged a secret deal with communist China that may or may not have included a massive bribe for the Vatican. He was the first pope to attend the G7. He was also the first pope to allow priests to bless same-sex couples. He openly sided with the globalists of the World Economic Forum. Archbishop Vigano explained this quite well. Watch.
The Fourth Revolution, theorized by Klaus Schwab and the family of international finance, find in Bergoglio not a neutral spectator, which would itself already be an unheard of thing, but actually a zealous cooperator who abuses his own moral authority in order to support ad extra, outside the church, the project of the dissolution of traditional society.
In short, Pope Francis was the worst pope in modern history. He confused the faithful regarding doctrine, and he consorted with the enemies of Christianity on a regular basis. And that's the absolute truth. Join me now as someone else who probably has a lot to say on the subject, maybe will be nicer than me about it, because you are. I'm not Catholic, but you are a devout Catholic. Welcome back to the show. For the second time in a matter of days, Mr. Mike McCormick. He's a former White House stenographer, a literal one, not the fake press one. And he's the author of An Insurmountable Evil, amongst a couple other books. Mike, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. Just your initial reaction to the death of the Pope.
God's will be done. Our Cardinal McCarrick, the evil man that Archbishop Vigano identified as a sexual predator, I think McCarrick was a CIA operative. He died 3 weeks ago. Here's Pope Francis. He passed away within hours of J.D. Vance dropping into the Vatican and meeting him. I talk about him a lot in my book, both men. And what I say about my book is it takes down two criminal presidents, Barack Obama and Joe Biden, and a dirty pope. Well, the dirty pope is now no longer with us. God's will be done. Um, I never met Pope Francis. I went to the Vatican with Joe Biden in 2016, was in a large auditorium when Pope Francis was on the stage. They were talking about cancer research reform and things like that. I didn't feel like he was particularly emanating a holiness. And when I started looking into White House visitor logs, that's what gave rise to my book. Because what I found was there were meetings between the Obama White House, Biden, and Dennis McDonough in particular, and this Cardinal McCarrick that led to, I think, the installation of Pope Francis as what I call the morality launderer for the Obama Biden White House for their policies. And Joe Biden took advantage of it all the way through into the pandemic.
You noted that I hadn't even thought about the coincidence until you brought it up of McCarrick and Pope Francis dying within a matter of weeks of one another. There have been longer reports of Pope Francis. Remember, there have been false reports going back all the way to my time at Newsmax, when a Newsmax reporters suggested that Pope Francis was dying in a matter of days, and that turned out not to be true. But it is kind of uncanny, right, that these two men who are linked in this terrible, terrible way through the pedophilia scandal in the church die within 3 weeks of each other, shortly after Donald Trump taking office, and then on the very weekend that the vice president under Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, visits the Vatican and has a last-minute, greeting meeting with Pope Francis among his last visitations. That is pretty wild, Mike.
Oh, yeah. Right. And so, I wrote a Substack on this on Friday after I talked with you. I was on your show. We had a really interesting talk. And J.D. Vance also met with Cardinal Parolin, and we talked about that on your show, how I think Cardinal Parolin was a bad guy. What I said in the Substack was, a vice presidential trip is advanced by about at least 4 weeks. So they would have told the Vatican, J.D. Vance is coming to visit you on Easter weekend a month earlier. That's when Pope Francis was, quote unquote, on his deathbed. And all of a sudden he made this recovery. J.D. Vance, they didn't back off from J.D. Vance visiting. They said, he's coming in. And so he visited on Easter weekend. He met with Parolin. In the run-up to that meeting, they eliminated all the funding for the Catholic U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. All this USAID funding has been withdrawn. They're not putting that back. I personally think J.D. Vance went to the Vatican to tell Parolin and Pope Francis, mostly Parolin, you're not getting your funding. And I hope he told Parolin, you're not going to be the next pope, because Parolin is a bad guy. He betrayed the Chinese Catholics. He was part of an anti-Trump movement within the Vatican. They opposed President Trump before he was even elected in 2016. Pope Francis got out there and he basically campaigned against Trump in February 2016 from the border from Mexico, doing an event on the border where he said, we have to build bridges, not walls. He was talking about the wall that President Trump was promising to build to preserve the immigration status, to stop illegal immigration. And so on the flight home from that trip, somebody asked him, well, do you think President Trump is building bridges or not walls? He said, I don't think someone who talks about building, he goes, I don't know this businessman, but I don't think someone who talks about building walls, not bridges, is a good Christian. I mean, this is the Pope talking about a presidential candidate. This was February 2016. Clearly in the camp of the Democrats, clearly a political activist, not a Pope. Yeah, good riddance to that guy.
How did the meeting go with Parolin and J.D. Vance? Because that was something we were looking ahead to. And do you think it's feasible? I don't think anyone is hinging on, it would, look, It would take a divine miracle to get a conservative pope at this point, right? Because Francis stacked the cardinals with very progressive, left-leaning, I would say Marxist globalists in in Allah his own ideology. So will it be Parolin or someone similar to Francis?
Well, God's will be done. I mean, we've got to have our faith in God we trust. One of the things I talk about when I write this book, and I checked in with Archbishop Vigano about this, and I emailed back and forth with him. And I said, Archbishop Vigano, I'm writing the truth about what I know Joe Biden and the Obama-Biden people did with Pope Francis. The truth is God's word. And when you speak the truth, you're speaking God's word, and God is on your side. So God is on our side on this as long as we speak the truth. The people in the Vatican who aren't speaking the truth, the Cardinal Parolins, they're the ones who have to answer to God. I think we have to have faith that God is on our side on this.
You do have a good relationship with Vigano, who was excommunicated by the now late Pope Francis. Have you talked to him since the news of Francis's death broke?
No, I read he did an X post this morning, and basically he said, Pope Francis has gone to meet his maker, and he didn't, he did a terrible job. He did evil. He brought evil into Jesus's church, and that's the truth. Archbishop Vigano spoke the truth and was excommunicated for it. I think if they run a conclave and they make whoever gets elected promises, I will unexcommunicate Archbishop Vigano, that would be a real sign to me that you have the right person.
Good point. Good point. Now, this made me laugh. This is terrible. I know you're not supposed to laugh, but as I noted with Alison Steinberg, I think that Pope Francis is a terrible person, and we can sit here and list even more than I listed in my open to your segment. And Coulter did tweet this earlier today saying that good job, JD, making a play on the fact that JD Vance was just there. But there are some leftists or some people who are actually suggesting that that JD Vance is a bad person because he went there to meet with, went to the Vatican. He did end up meeting with the Pope, and then the Pope dies.
I think they pushed that agenda. They pushed that right into the Vatican, and they strong-armed them. To me, I wrote the Substack. It was like they sent their Marine into the Vatican for God and country, and it worked. God's will be done.
I don't know if you also saw the news, Mike, but you also, in having covered, having been a stenographer in the White House and met so many of these powerful elite people, you and your books talk about the global elite, right, at large, and the cabal that it is. And that includes, of course, Joe Biden, former President Barack Obama, and the American political class. But I don't know if you also saw the news today, which we're going to get into in a little bit later with Alex Newman. But Klaus Schwab is stepping down. So I think it's kind of wild if you note, it's the day after Easter, Mike.
Right.
And the globalists are in retreat. Some are resigning. Yes. Some are dying. Like you said, praise the Lord. What do you think about the news? I mean, it does, when you put it all together, it's just almost too coincidental that Klaus Schwab is stepping down now. He announces his resignation on the day that we find out that Pope Francis is dead, and a few weeks after McCarrick is gone. What do you make of this news?
Like you said, they're in retreat. And my sense of it is that you've got globalists who are backpedaling. J.D. Vance went to the Vatican on Easter. He pushed that agenda, and they had to backpedal, and it may have affected the Pope. The Pope may have just passed because it was his time. It's God knows. God's his judge. I'm not going to judge the Pope. I told the truth about him. It's in my book. But this globalist thing to me is they're, yes, in retreat, and they're reestablishing a fallback position. So they're getting rid of the old guys, and they're seeing, what the next layer of defense that they're going to defend. And we've got to keep pushing. We got to keep getting the word out and get a good Pope in there, and get more information. There's more information coming out of Argentina about these Nazi files that they're going to release. Mm-hmm. They may have information about Pope Francis's when he was Argentina when he was Jorge Bergoglio in Argentina. They may have information about what he was doing there.
Do we know when those files might drop? I know you spoke about them last week on my show as well. Any idea about when we can expect to get those?
I don't know. They were talking about this week. It may be delayed because of this Pope. Argentina, I don't think they had a great Pope Francis, from what I understand, never went back to Argentina once he became Pope. So there's an estrangement there. And like you quoted the president, there's a lot of Argentinians who don't like Pope Francis.
Yeah, there's not. I was a little surprised at how, kind Trump was in describing the Pope, because as you noted, the Pope was not nearly so kind in his interactions or his rhetoric about Donald Trump and his administration the first time around, and not this time around either. Mike McCormick, thank you so much. There's so much that's coming out in the near future. I think they'll probably delay those files in light of the death of the Pope, but we'll keep our eye on it. But what we do not need to do is take our eye off the ball of the globalists. They may be in retreat, but that may be only to regalvanize the troops and come back with greater force. So we need to keep our eye on the globalist ball. Thank you so much, Mike McCormick, for helping us do that.
Thanks, Emerald.
And in other major news today, with the stock market dropping like a rock, President Donald Trump recently posted this on his Truth Social account, saying, quote, preemptive cuts in interest rates are being called for by many. He said, with energy costs way down, food prices, including Biden's egg disaster, substantially lower, and most other things trending down, there is virtually no inflation. With these costs trending so nicely downward, just what I predicted they would do, there can almost be no inflation. But there can be a slowing of the economy unless Mr. Too Late, a major loser, lowers interest rates now. That loser Trump is referring to is obviously Fed Chair Jerome Powell. Now, all of this is a part of a larger movement by President Donald Trump to force Fed Chairman Powell to either do as he says or be fired. And one interesting rumor you might not have heard is that President Donald Trump likes a most unconventional pick for Powell's potential successor, namely iconic Wall Street contrarian Dr. Michael Burry, who famously predicted the 2008 market crash and became fabulously wealthy as a result of that. And for those of you who might not know exactly who Michael Burry is, well, he's the guy Christian Bale played in the big movie, The Big Short. In a somewhat more cryptic dig at the Fed Reserve that is seen as controlling the economic strings, Trump posted this also to Truth Social, saying, quote, causing the Fed, he posted this, which caused the price of gold to soar overnight. He said, quote, the golden rule of negotiating is success. He who has the gold makes the rules, which means it's a good time for us to mention that it is obviously a great time to buy gold. Visit MikeLindellGold.com, MikeLindellGold.com. When you do, you'll get a free gold coin, a free coin, and up to $20,000 in free silver, and learn how you can ride the golden Trump wave. Go to LindellGold.com.
With everybody talking about making America healthy again, I thought today'd be a great day to talk to all my fellow patriots about the importance of making your homes healthy again. Well, we have proudly partnered with AirWaterHealing.com and their revolutionary whole home air purification system. The V3 from Air Water Healing does 3,000 square feet of purification. It eliminates dust, mold, viruses, and odors. But here's the part I love. They require no filters to ever be changed and virtually no maintenance. Whether you suffer from asthma, allergies, seasonal bronchitis, or just want to protect your family from the flu or even greater threats, don't wait to get your V3 from AirWaterHealing.com today. Use code Lindell for 20% off in savings and free shipping. That's promo code Lindell at AirWaterHealing.com. Have you ever wondered what happened to the legendary Chuck Norris? Well, I recently saw a video he made and I was shocked. That guy's amazing and he's staying active well into his 80s. What's even more shocking is he's stronger, can work out longer, and even has plenty of energy left over for his grandkids. He did this by just making one change. He says he still feels like he's in his 50s. His wife even started doing this one thing too, and she's never felt better. She says she feels 10 years younger, her body looks leaner, and she has energy all day. Chuck made a very special video that explains everything. Make sure you watch it by going to chuckdefense.com/Lindell. It will change the way you think about your health. Once again, that's chuckdefense.com/Lindell. You won't believe how simple it is.
It's a bad time to be a globalist. What with Trump in the Oval Office, the Marxist Pope finally gone, and now Klaus Schwab, the great villain of all free people, resigning from his role as head of the World Economic Forum. Of course, whether or not Schwab is also resigning from his role as the world's greatest villain is another question entirely, and we'll get to that with our next guest. For our part, though, we here at The Absolute Truth and Lindell TV support sending Klaus Schwab a nice going away present full of his favorite bugs to eat, since he and the WEF were so gung-ho about trying to force us little people into eating the bugs. My next guest, Alex Newman of Liberty Sentinel, has been shining much-needed light on the terrible darkness that is the globalist agenda, and he joins us now to talk about what happens next and how best we can finally put the nail in their coffin. I do fear, Alex, that we're in a game of whack-a-mole, right? We'll feel like we've whacked that last head of a globalist, yet another one will pop up. What moment do we find ourselves in? Clearly they are in retreat, but is it just in order to take a breather, regalvanize the troops, and come back with a vengeance?
It's great to be here. Thank you very much for having me, Emerald. And we've seen this strategy with Marxists for many generations. They'll take two steps forward, and when the pressure gets too intense, they take a step back. I think right now we're in the take a step back phase. Klaus Schwab is now, I think, almost universally reviled, and people are embarrassed to be seen with him. It's hard to imagine how they chose this guy to be the front man for their agenda. But he said something very profound in his book on the Great Reset that I think bears repeating here. He talked about how under COVID, globalization had gotten a really bad smell. People were outraged by the globalism, and they demanded a retreat from that. But then he says we have an in-between solution, and that in-between solution is regionalization. So we're going to empower these regional governing entities while we get support for globalism built back up again. So I think that's what they're going to try to do. We're seeing very, very quiet progress on the globalist agenda. And I can give you a few examples. Just last week, Emerald, the International Maritime Organization, very quietly, by the way, they put out the press release on Friday, announced the first ever global tax on humanity. It's in the form of a carbon tax on all international shipping. This is huge news. Donald Trump quietly circulated a letter telling them they better not do it. We're going to impose reciprocal measures. They did it anyway. The final vote will be in October. The World Health Organization just came up with the International Pandemic Agreement. They're going to have a final vote on that soon, too. And everybody assumes since the U.S. government's not a part of it, it's not going to affect us. So they're still marching forward, but they realize that they have lost any semblance of public support in the United States, so they're certainly playing defense.
They're playing defense. How do we take the final heads? How do we ultimately destroy them so utterly, terribly bad that they can't come back?
Well, I think to really cut off the head of the snake would be very helpful. And I think for the first time in my lifetime, Emerald, and probably yours as well, we have a opportunity to actually do that. Right? There's legislation introduced in the House of Representatives and in the U.S. Senate. It's called the Defund Act. And don't let the name fool you. It's not about defunding the United Nations. In fact, the D stands for disengaging. The E is entirely from the United Nations Debacle Act. So a very important piece of legislation. It was introduced in the House by Congressman Chip Roy, introduced in the Senate by U.S. Senator Mike Lee. And if you look at what Donald Trump has been doing since he came into office, he is probably the first president in either of our lifetimes who'd be willing to at least seriously consider legislation like that. If we were to get out of the UN, we wouldn't have to fight all these individual battles, a pandemic treaty over here, a global tax on shipping over there, a climate agreement over here. It would just stop it for probably a period of decades. And so the globalists have thought about this. They know that this kind of sentiment exists in America. But I think that right there, I did an article about this in the New American back in 2017 as Trump was coming into the White House last time, getting out of the United Nations for good. This would be the ultimate blow to the globalist agenda, because if they lost the UN, they would lose their primary instrument for advancing this agenda.
Well, it seems like now would be the time to strike, right? Because even Politico is basically, as of the last couple of years, noting that if something happened to Klaus Schwab, there would be no real secession plan for him. There's not a real obvious person to take over, and maybe you disagree, and if so, perhaps you already know someone that they'll look to next. But perhaps the globalists are in disarray, and with the departure of Klaus Schwab, it seems now would be the time to strike on any piece of legislation like that, or any moves that would remove us from the UN.
Yeah, I think now is absolutely the time to strike. If you look at what Donald Trump has done early on now in his second administration, this is way beyond what he did in the first. I mean, he drove basically a nail through the heart of the climate agenda, took away all the funding, got us out of every one of the UN's climate agreements negotiated under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. So he is like a bull in a china shop when it comes to globalism. Just last week, he proposed cutting all U.S. funding for the UN's peacekeeping forces, which are famous around the world for raping and killing women and children. So Donald Trump is really doing almost everything he can within the limits of his executive authority. But now, again, Congress has the opportunity to take this a step further, because we saw some of this during the first administration. And what happened when we got another deep state Democrat puppet in the White House is all of it was reversed. A lot of it on the first day that Joe Biden was sworn into office. And even if the election coming up goes our way and the next one after that goes our way, at some point, if we're all intellectually honest, we're going to end up with another deep state Democrat puppet in the White House. So these changes have to be institutionalized in law. And Speaker Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Cornyn have a lot of responsibility on their plates. And I think if they start hearing from constituents, if the members of their caucus start hearing from their constituents, the momentum could build. Because these bills have been introduced in Congress forever. Ron Paul used to introduce the American Sovereignty Restoration Act. But now we need really some serious public momentum, and we could get this done.
You know what? That's a great point, and that's what I want to get to next. There's a part to play by everyone in this war against the globalists. As you said, constituents, you're a voter in a certain district. You can call your representative and say, hey, I really want you to vote for this piece of legislation that's been introduced for so long. Give them the support they need. Let them know that you will back them up in your community. You will support them when they do this. That's our part that every average American can play. Then there's the role of state and local officials. And I really like, and I love to give kudos when people do the right thing. This one would be Governor Huckabee Sanders. She did authorize, Sarah Huckabee Sanders authorized the 10 Commandments in Arkansas school. That's something that the globalists had fought against. The globalists are against anything Christian particularly, right? They're totally against Christianity. So this is a way potentially, right, to combat globalism at the state and local level while also strengthening families in the church, which also makes it harder for the globalists to control us.
There's no question, Emerald, and I'm glad you brought this up. I think the most significant action, other than what Trump is doing, that we've seen against globalism over the last few years has come from Republican state governments. We've seen multiple states, not just Arkansas. We've seen Louisiana. We've seen Oklahoma. We've seen a bunch of states moving, first of all, to restore the 10 Commandments into education, to restore the Bible in schools. Oklahoma has now mandated that under the leadership of Superintendent Ryan Walters. We're also seeing bills that explicitly take aim at globalism. Louisiana, for example, passed a law banning the influence of the World Health Organization in its state policies. We're seeing bills like this all over the country. Alabama in 2012 unanimously passed legislation banning the UN Agenda 21, which is the UN's agenda for the 21st century, in any state agency, any local government agency, or in any way infringing on the property rights of citizens there. So there's a lot happening at the state level. we can see much more of that. And people don't realize how easy it is to influence policy at the state level. So we don't have to wait for Congress to act. As we speak, states are taking really, really profound actions that will protect their communities and their states from globalism, and will also lay a foundation for building a new generation that will resist these attacks on our sovereignty, on our families, on our nation, on our liberties. So what's happening here in Arkansas and other states is absolutely huge, Emerald, and I would encourage people to get involved in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And also teach your kids the idea of sovereignty from a young age, and liberty, and a reverence for the Ten Commandments and God and the Bill of Rights. That's also what you can do on your part. Look, Alex, I want to keep a watch on this. You said it's October that we'll know more about this maritime tax, this shipping tax, and this really is it's very important, because this would essentially be a backdoor way to fund a one world government. So this is no small item, and obviously Trump, it's on his radar. He's already trying to counter this. So that's great news to start with, but we'll keep our eye on that, and we'll have you back. But we'll have you back before then. Thank you so much, Alex Newman with the Liberty Sentinel Media. It's always good to see you.
You too. Thank you so much, Emerald.
You, my friend, need Native Path collagen, made with only type 1 and type 3 collagen fibers. These are the two most important types that make up 90% of the collagen in your body. It's found in cartilage, bones, skin, hair, nails, your gut. Type 1 and 3 provide maximum benefits without the need for unnecessary fillers. Also, Native Path collagen has no additives, no artificial sweeteners. It's also completely flavorless, which is important because Native Path collagen can be added to anything. I put it in my coffee. Also, because of its special peptide formulation, it mixes more easily than any other collagen I've ever tried, and I've tried a lot. But the best part, Native Path offers amazing bundle deals. You can get 3 or 6 packs at a fraction of the price of other brands. Plus, they have a 365-day no-risk guarantee, making Native Path the trusted choice. All you have to do is visit getnativepath.com/truth. That's getnativepath.com/truth to start your transformation.
Whether it's being a weekend warrior or spending time with your family, feeling your best is the key to doing the things you love. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Nirvanta. It's a natural solution designed to help you stay active and live well naturally. Nirvanta is a topical blend of all natural essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, and a proprietary gold standard plant stock extract. It's perfect for your hands, feet, knees, back, or anywhere else that needs a little extra care. Use Nirvanta proactively as part of your daily maintenance routine, and you're guaranteed you're going to feel the difference. Simply massage Nirvanta in for at least 60 seconds, 2 to 3 times a day to get the best results. And if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. No questions asked. There's simply no risk and no reason not to try Nirvanta today. Right now, you get 15% off with code Lindell exclusively at nirvantahealth.com. So stop reaching out for that medicine cabinet. Get Nirvanta instead and experience the difference. Go to nirvantahealth.com. Use code Lindell to get 15% off today. Nirvanta Health. Live well naturally.
While the world celebrated Easter Sunday, the Trump administration landed C-17 Globemaster transport planes at Israel's Nevada Air Base and offloaded Buster bombs landed in Israel over the past 24 hours. The deliveries reportedly prepare Israel and the U.S. for potential strikes on Iran's nuclear sites if talks collapse. And as the push for war becomes almost unstoppable, a bureaucratic knife fight has erupted behind the scenes in the halls of the Pentagon. And SecDef Pete Hegseth finds himself on the losing side of this fight for now. As I broke earlier today on Twitter, quote, the push to get rid of Pete Hegseth is being done by the pro-Israel hawks who want to install Senator Tom Cotton in the Pentagon to make sure America goes to war with Iran. That's according to 3 different sources I've spoken with. Join us now to discuss more in detail just what is going on with U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East and why there is this sudden turmoil in the U.S. defense establishment. We're joined by our own in-house geopolitical analyst and author of The Shadow War, Iran's Quest for Supremacy, Brendan Weicker. I know you and I are hearing very similar mumblings about Pete Hegseth. And today, as we speak, or earlier today, it just didn't even sound good coming out of the White House. Did we confirm, did Trump 47 or Rapid Response 47 really retweet that a post about Hexeth not being long for the Trump world?
Yeah, and that comes from another account that it was not necessarily an official account, but the original reporting is coming from Twitter, this Twitter account where they're saying that Hegseth is not long for this world, and it looks like Rapid Response is retweeting it without shooting it down, which tells you there's something
That's
afoot
odd.
here. It's odd because if I were Trump, I would be telling my people, do not feed into this. Even if it's true, deny, deny, deny.
Yeah, I agree. I will tell you, I heard that the major figures, two major figures behind this push is Senator Tom Cotton himself, who originally wanted the job from the start, right?
Right.
His guy, Alex Wong, is the deputy national security advisor. So one of his top aides made it to there. Tom Cotton thought he would likely be a pick for Secretary of Defense. I also heard that Paul Singer, who, for those of you who don't know, is a huge Republican donor, but he's more on the neocon establishment rhino side, is also a major backer of this idea of pushing out Hegseth and putting in Tom Cotton. And they're feeling very confident that this is going to happen, from what I hear.
Oh, I've heard explicitly from people, very senior people behind the scenes, that everybody at the Pentagon's anticipating this. This is already, underway. And I know that your reporting has sort of corroborated what I'm hearing behind the scenes. Something to consider as well. Tom Cotton, as you say, wanted the job from day one, and it looked like he was kind of positioning his allies throughout the Trump administration's national security team, Alex Wong being the most notable, but he has other allies throughout both the Pentagon as well as on the National Security Council. And in fact, this whole Signal Gate app mishap where the Signal Gate or the signal was leaked to Jeffrey Goldberg over at The Atlantic, it looks like the actual target from the beginning was Pete Hegseth, because if you remember, as soon as
we
Jeffrey
thought it was J.D. Vance.
that was initially well, that's what I thought too. But then when you go back and you look at the articles that came out at the time, they're all pinning it initially on Hegseth. And then it sort of transitioned where they couldn't quite pin Hegseth down. So they started going after other people. I think this is about getting rid of Hegseth. And by the way, if they can get rid of Hegseth, which they are, I think Hegseth is done for. Whether it happens now or 6 months from now, I don't think he's long for this world. Unfortunately, I'm one of the few fans of Pete Hegseth, I know. But I think if they can get Hegseth, the next one to go down is going to be Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi's going to be next on the list. They're trying to get rid of
She's already done a few things that they wouldn't have wanted to do. I mean, she released the domestic terrorism report from, or, strategy from Biden. She's also plans to release more files from what I've said. She also noted that the voting machines was vulnerable, the electronic voting machines, in a recent cabinet meeting.
Remember, a couple weeks ago at the Intelligence Committee hearing, she downplayed Iran having nukes. And this all goes back to the foreign policy issue, which is there's an element of people around Trump who very badly want us to hit Iran as quickly as possible. And I'll be the first to tell you. Yeah.
No, just say that.
Yeah. Well, I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not a fan of the Iranian regime, but I don't think this is MAGA going to war in the Middle East again. And I think Hegseth, interestingly, indicated that there's a rumor out there that he agreed with Vance last week in stopping Trump from letting the Israelis attack Iran. And if that's the case, if there's any truth to that, then Hegseth is definitely a target because he stopped an attack by Israel on Iran last week with JD and Tulsi.
Yeah, there were unconfirmed reports of that. As you said, there are a lot of voices pushing for war with Iran. In fact, this is a tweet from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy's Mark Dubowitz, who said the Islamic Republic is weaker than ever, hated by most Iranians, hammered by the IDF and Mossad, giving a lot of other justifications, and then added, there's never a better time to dismantle its nuke program and finish off the regime. Well, another POTUS blink. And then there's the unconfirmed reports that it was both not only Vance and Gabbard, who we assumed have been dissuading Trump from attacking Iran, but that Hegseth was also a voice in the choir not to strike.
Yeah.
Where is this going? Because, I mean, it sounds like Trump last week in some of his appearances sound like he really wanted to have real talks with Iran, but obviously there's the neocon push to strike, and there's also the Israeli push to strike, and there's some suggestion, I think you've heard this, you know, your sources telling you that Israel could strike anyway without even the US's go ahead, that it sounds like they do plan to strike no matter what, right?
I was told explicitly this weekend by a very senior person with ties to both our Pentagon as well as the Israeli Ministry of Defense that, in fact, Israel is going to strike regardless of what happens with these negotiations. And they're going to do it sooner because in the event the negotiations between Trump and the Iranians actually do gain some momentum, they don't want it to go forward because they're opposed to a deal. So the Israelis are going to go no matter what. I would say it could be as close as 2 weeks from now. Within the next 2 weeks, it could be as early as, and they're going to strike not just nuclear facilities, but they will strike the regime as well to try to decapitate it. And whatever happens after that, the Israelis are basically going to say, tag, you're it, Donald Trump. You got to clean this mess up. And so they're going to lock us in no matter what. And for the Israelis, by the way, I fully acknowledge it is not in their security interest to let Iran continue on as they are. But in the American perspective, it's a little bit more complex and not as clear cut that we benefit right now from a war in the Middle East.
So if it's going to if it's inevitable, it's perhaps that also the rationale behind just replacing Hegseth with Senator Tom Cotton is if there's going to be a strike on Iran no matter what, and we're going to be left cleaning it up. This is what Tom Cotton has had to say about Iran in the past. Listen.
And finally, there's some hysteria about the prospect of the president ordering these strikes, or someone like you in uniform providing him advice, that it's going to lead to another forever war or another endless war. Are you aware of operations, maybe operations against Iran, like the tanker wars in 1988, in which the forceful but discriminate application of military power did not lead to a forever war or an endless war, but rather led to peace and stability?
Yes, sir. Those examples in our history do exist.
Maybe the Qasem Soleimani strike in 2020 as well, that caused Iran to pull in its horns for the rest of President Trump's first term. Thank you, General Kane.
Thank
you. I think that should tell your audience everything you need to know on where this is going. Look, Tom Cotton's a patriot. Tom Cotton served this country. I knew him when he was a congressman. I did a lot of work with his staff. He's right on a lot of issues. On this issue, though, he's completely off. To compare what's being discussed with the tanker war in '88 is so unbelievably historically ignorant. Going after some tankers and trying to prevent attacks on our tankers is a truly limited military engagement. What Cotton and other neocons are trying to get us to do is to not only attack those nuclear facilities, which is sort of the legitimate, this is what the Iranian regime puts their legitimacy on, is the ability to kind of, thumb their nose at the Americans and build nukes. If we go after that source of legitimacy, the Iranians are not just going to back down because of that. And what's more, with the Israelis going after regime targets, this is going to escalate into a much bigger war. And it's not anything that Tom Cotton is talking about. He is so off base here. And the general in this interview, he clearly was uncomfortable with it because he knew what Cotton was saying was malarkey.
Yeah. Real quick, Laura Loomer is reporting today that Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida has pitched himself as a replacement for a Secretary of Defense. Any possibility of that happening rather than Cotton?
I don't have any idea about what DeSantis's team is doing. I know that they're going to be in the fight of their lives with Byron Donalds, Casey and Byron for governor. So I don't know. I don't know. The fact is, Hegseth is the guy, and they should not fire him because people behind the scenes want him fired. Hegseth should stay.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if he somehow emerges from this night fight. Yep. He's sure in it, and he looked like it earlier today when he was at the White House egg roll, and he was asked about it by a reporter. I mean, look, we don't even have to play the sound. Just look at his face. That tells you everything. Yeah. He's isolated. Definitely he was on his heels today. He was definitely on his heels, and you can see. I've watched his face enough now to know he's he realizes he's in the knife fight and he's not
He's
real
out.
comfortable where he is right now. We'll see how it goes. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for
See you later.
sharing your exclusive reporting, Brandon. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
If you want to feel and look your best, you need to check out Pure Health Research. They have 45 premium health supplements that are designed to help you with everyday health goals. Whether it's boosting your energy or trimming belly fat, supporting healthy blood sugar, pumping your testosterone up, or even reducing swelling in your legs, Pure Health Research Supplement Store has you covered. Each formula is crafted with natural, non-GMO ingredients, backed by clinical research and manufactured right here in the USA. And here's the best part. Pure Health Research is offering you an exclusive 35% discount. Just go to purehealthresearch.com and use promo code Lindell at checkout. With their 365-day money-back guarantee, there's nothing to lose. So head over to purehealthresearch.com now, explore their 45 amazing supplements, and save 35% before this deal ends with promo code Lindell. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses Go BHB. Go BHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
Are you looking for monthly income without the risk of stocks because you don't feel like maybe you're well versed enough in the stock market? Well, here's something you won't hear about on CNBC. There's a unique way to collect royalties directly from America's most productive oil fields. No exploring, drilling, or operational headaches required. You simply collect checks month after month. And the best part? You can get started with just $25 through any brokerage account. The Oxford Club's chief income strategist, Mark Lichtenfeld, breaks down what he believes is the #1 oil royalty play for 2025. Simply visit RobinsonOilBoom.com now for more information. That's RobinsonOilBoom.com. RobinsonOilBoom.com now for more information. That's RobinsonOilBoom.com. Investigative reporter Philip Lazinski of the Daily Caller News Foundation has dropped a bombshell report on how radical leftist Democrat Boston Mayor Michelle Wu's campaign was funded by none other than, you guessed it, the Chinese Communist Party. Wow, that certainly explains why Boston has become the poster child for America Last policy today now, doesn't it? It's notably a sanctuary city denying the Trump administration's deportations of violent illegal immigrants from within Boston. But it isn't just Boston's Michelle Wu who has been funded by the CCP. A Fox News report from February of this year showed Senator Chuck Schumer, the Democratic Party's Senate minority leader from New York, proudly posing with a known CCP agent in the United States at a fundraiser. Lest we forget the awful case of Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell from California and his torrid affair with known Chinese spy Christine Fang. Swalwell sat for years on the House Intelligence Committee. The Democrats have a Chinese Communist Party problem, and that's the absolute truth. Well, Easter is over, and that means that spring has officially sprung. So there's no better time to start afresh with a new set of sheets. I'm glad to tell you that you can get excited because MyPillow is extending its mega spring sale on overstock clearance as well as brand new products. For example, save $40 on the new spring MyPillow bed sheets, any size, any color, with some beautiful spring colors and pastels. Save 30% on the brand new Mike crosses. They're designed in the very likeness of that one Mike has worn every day for over the last 20 years that has become so iconic and synonymous with Mr. Lindell. They come in both men's and women's, and they're made right here in the good old US of A. You can also get a 6-piece bat towel set for only $39.98. The initial quantities are extremely low, so you want to get them before they're gone. And of course, you can always get the best-selling standard MyPillow, but not always at this fantastic price of just $17.98. So you definitely want to take advantage of the Mega Sale 2.0 for spring. Go to mypillow.com. Use promo code TRUTH, okay? Use your promo code TRUTH, or you can call the toll-free number you see at the bottom of your screen, 800-944-5396, 800-944-5396. But that's not all, folks, because when you spend over $75, Mr. Lindell is going to gift you with free shipping. How's that for spring? All right, that's it for us today. We'll see you right back here at 2:30 live tomorrow, 8 p.m. prime time, right here on LindellTV.com. And that's the absolute truth.